Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says China has expressed complete support for Islamabad's stance on Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Talking to the media about his recent visit to China, Qureshi said Beijing has outrightly rejected India's claim on eastern Ladakh. He said his visit was instrumental in discussing a joint future strategy regarding regional stability. The Taliban say their high-level delegation will discuss the Afghan peace process with senior Pakistani officials in Islamabad today. In a tweet, Taliban spokesperson Suhail Shaheen said the delegation is being led by Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar Akhund. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said the Taliban are visiting on Islamabad's invitation. The visit comes amid Islamabad's continuous efforts to push the warring sides in Afghanistan to start direct talks. Ten Philippine people have been killed and 40 others wounded in twin explosions in the country's southern Jolo town. Military said one of the blasts was caused by a homemade bomb planted on a motorcycle. There has been no immediate claim of responsibility. India has become the epicenter of COVID-19 as it has been reporting the highest number of daily new cases in the world for the last 18 days. The Indian Health Ministry has reported 836 deaths and over 61,000 infections in a day, bringing the total cases to 3.1 million. In Pakistan, 9 people lost their lives to the virus and nearly 500 tested positive overnight, taking the country's caseload to 293,000. Globally, the pandemic has infected over 23.3 million people and claimed more than 807,000 lives. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now beginning with the news stories. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says China has expressed complete support for Islamabad's stance on Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Talking to the media about this recent visit to China, Qureshi said Beijing has outrightly rejected India's claim on occupied Kashmir and eastern Ladakh. He said the Kashmir issue was especially taken up for discussion during the second round of Pakistan-China strategic dialogue. Qureshi said his visit was instrumental in discussing a joint future strategy regarding regional stability. The foreign minister warned that India can stage a false flag operation to malign Pakistan and the freedom struggle of the Kashmiris. Pakistan's top diplomat said 6 Kashmiri political parties considered close to New Delhi have turned against India's illegal actions in the occupied valley. The Taliban say their high-level delegation will discuss the Afghan peace process with senior Pakistani officials in Islamabad. In a tweet, Taliban spokesperson Suhail Shaheen said the delegation is being led by Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar Akhund. He said the issue of Afghan refugees in Pakistan, trade and other related issues will also come under discussion. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said the Taliban are visiting on Islamabad's invitation. The last time a Taliban delegation visited Pakistan was in October last year. The current visit comes amid Islamabad's ongoing efforts to push the warring sides in Afghanistan to start direct talks. Now for more on this, we have been joined by our correspondent in Islamabad, Isa Nwaki. Isa, could you please update us on the Taliban's visit to Pakistan and what would be their engagements here?
Monique, we have just discussed the visit and the schedule and agenda of the Taliban delegation's visit to Pakistan with Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. And he has expressed a lot of positivity about the possible outcome of the talks that the Taliban delegation is going to hold with several officials in Pakistan and in Islamabad. And he said that he hopes that the intra-Afghan dialogue will be initiated soon, and he said that there are certain hurdles and certain bottlenecks in the initiation of the dialogue, but he hoped that after the Islamabad visit, the things will clear up and the intra-Afghan dialogue will be initiated. And also he said that the Afghan government will also be taken into confidence regarding the ongoing visit. The delegation is a 6-member delegation which has arrived in Islamabad, and they will be holding meetings with officials in Pakistan. But tomorrow they are going to come to the Foreign Office to hold delegation-level talks with the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and other senior officials.
Right, Isa, thank you very much for the latest update. We have also been joined by an analyst, Rahimullah Yousafzai, to talk on this. Thank you, Mr. Rahimullah, for talking to Indus News. Now, the Taliban say they are visiting Pakistan. So what do the two sides seek to achieve through this visit?
The invitation has been given by Pakistan and Taliban have accepted it. So this is fairly important. High-level delegation led by the deputy leader of Taliban movement, Mullah Abdul Ghani Biradar, who is also the head of the Taliban Political Commission Office in Qatar. So I believe that the discussion would be focused, number one, on trying to remove the hurdles in starting the intra-Afghan dialogue. Secondly, I think they will be talking about the completion of the exchange of prisoners. That has been the biggest hurdle, and it's primarily the hurdles are being created by the Afghan government. So I think that Pakistan will try to help. The U.S. also is making its efforts to remove those hurdles. And I think that, Qatar also has got a very important role. So I believe that Pakistan, has shown that it is making a big effort to try to start the intra-Afghan dialogue. And this is one indication that, we have been inviting Taliban delegation to Pakistan. The last time when Taliban came here, that was also very important because there was a hurdle, at that time in the dialogue, in the negotiation between the U.S. and Taliban, and Pakistan was able to remove those hurdles, and then the talks resumed, and finally in February, the Doha peace agreement was made.
Right, Mr. Rahim, how instrumental has Pakistan's role been in bringing the Afghan peace process to this point when all stakeholders are willing to talk out a political solution?
Pakistan's role has been critical, and, Taliban also trusts Pakistan. And the Afghan government has reservations about Pakistan's role. But the U.S. is very keen that Pakistan should play a more, significant role in trying to remove the hurdles. So Pakistan, has been trying to help the U.S. It is also keen to help the Afghan government. But somehow, the Afghan government believes that Pakistan is doing it for its own interest and not for the sake of peace in Afghanistan. So that kind of misgivings have to be removed. And it's not going to be easy. The Ashraf Ghani government initially said that they were not part of the peace agreement with Taliban, and the U.S. made that commitment for the release of Taliban prisoners. So Ashraf Ghani refused to release the prisoners. Then he said, okay, they will release them, but not all of them, especially 400 who they thought were involved in heinous crimes, and they have been convicted. But now they have released 80, still they have to release the remaining 320. So I think the Afghan government has been creating hurdles, and Ashraf Ghani said he has no authority to release all these convicted Taliban prisoners. But then he called this consultative Yoga, which actually gave the go-ahead that all of these prisoners should be released. But even now, this has not happened. And now there are hurdles being created by France and Australia, although they must have known since long that these Taliban prisoners, who they allege have killed French and Australian soldiers, they would be released as part of the exchange of prisoners deal. So I think that, Taliban have done their part of the deal. They have released 1,000 government prisoners, but the Afghan government is still dragging its feet, and that hurdle needs to be removed. Otherwise, the intra-Afghan dialogue will not start.
Rightfully, Mr. Rahimullah Yousafzai, an analyst, you were talking to Indus News, updating us about the Taliban's visit to Pakistan. We'll keep our audiences with the latest updates. Now, moving on with the news stories. Hearings of New Zealand's Christchurch terrorist attack on 2 mosques on 2019 have begun. The attacks killed 51 Muslim worshippers. Brenton Tarrant has pleaded guilty to 51 murder charges, 40 charges of attempted murder and terrorism. At the start of the hearing, the court was informed that Tarrant wanted to target a third mosque in the area as well. Tarrant is representing himself in court as the survivors and relatives of the victims attend the hearings. New Zealand's High Court will announce his prison term later this week. Moving on, 10 Philippine people have been killed and 40 others wounded in twin explosions in the country's southern Jolo town. The military said one of the blasts was caused by a homemade bomb planted on a motorcycle. It said the first blast took place around noon in front of a food center, which killed 5 soldiers and 4 civilians. The second explosion went off an hour later. The explosions marked the biggest attack since January 2019, when twin suicide bombings at a church killed more than 20 and wounded at least 100. There has been no immediate claim of responsibility by any group. Now, an explosion on the Arab gas pipeline has caused a total blackout in Syria. State media says the explosion occurred between the Ad-Damer and Adra areas in the northeast. U.S. envoy for Syria, James Jeffrey, says he is still looking into the gas pipeline attack in Syria, and it's almost certainly that it was a strike by ISIS. Earlier, the country's oil minister, Ali Hanim, said the explosion could be a terrorist act. He said the pipeline feeds power stations in the southern parts of the country, and technical teams are already present on the ground. In 2013, much of Syria was hit by a power cut after rebel shelling hit a gas pipeline during the country's civil war. The Arab gas pipeline system extends from Egypt into Jordan and Syria. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, moving on with the news stories. Israeli warplanes have attacked the Gaza Strip in another night of intense violence. The Israeli Defense Ministry says it struck Hamas military posts and underground structure in retaliation to incendiary balloon attacks. No casualties have been reported from the raid so far. Eyewitnesses say at least 2 airstrikes hit a point belonging to the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades in southeastern Gaza. Tensions have been rising for over a week, with Israel accusing Hamas of firing rockets and launching bundles of incendiary balloons across the border. Israel has also closed the Karim Abu Salim goods crossing with the Gaza Strip. Now, the UK says it will press Israel and Palestine for renewed dialogue. British Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said he will meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas this week. Raab said he will push the 2 countries to work towards a negotiated 2-state solution. He said the UK remains committed to Israel's security and stability. It said the recent normalization of relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates is an important breakthrough for the region. Meanwhile, Russia and Turkey have signed a contract to deliver a second regiment of the S-400 air defense systems. Rosoborono Export Director General Alexander Mikheyev made his announcement while speaking to media. Rosoborono Export in Russia's sole state export and import intermediary agency for the entire range of defense-related products. The first delivery of the S-400 system to Turkey was completed in 2019. Turkey is the first NATO member to purchase such an air defense missile system from Russia. The S-400 missile system is considered the most advanced of its kind in Russia. Now in Libya, the commander of the Eastern Forces, Khalifa Haftar, has dismissed a ceasefire announcement by the UN. Recognized government at a media briefing, Libyan National Army spokesman Ahmed Mismari called the truce declaration a marketing stunt. The spokesman said GNA forces from the war-torn countries west were mobilizing around front lines. He said if the GNA forces wanted peace, they would have drawn back and not advanced towards Sirte. Mismari said LNA is ready to respond to any attempted attack on its positions around the coastal city of Sirte and Jafra. LNA's response comes after the government of National Accord announced a countrywide ceasefire on Friday. Moving on, Iran says the visit of the international nuclear watchdog chief Rafael Grossi is taking place within the framework of the Safeguards Agreements. It said Grossi will also discuss 2015 nuclear deal and the related protocols. Spokesman for Iran's Atomic Energy Organization said the volume of heavy water produced in Iran, parts of which are exported to a number of European countries, referring to the visit of the Secretary General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Grossi Behruz. Kamal Vandi said it will help remove both sides' concerns. He said Grossi's visit will lead to a reinforced mutual cooperation between the two states. Iran's nuclear body says last month's fire at a major nuclear power facility in southeastern city of NATANZ was caused by sabotage. But Iran's Atomic Energy Organization did not say who they believe is behind the incident. Spokesman for the nuclear body, Behruz Kamal Vandi, says authorities will reveal the reason behind the July blast in the coming days. Some Iranian officials have previously said the fire might have been the result of cyber sabotage. Iran had earlier ruled out any miscreant activity leading to the series of fires at various power plants. Now, India has become the epicenter of COVID-19 as it has been reporting the highest number of daily new cases in the world for the last 18 days. The Indian Health Ministry has reported 836 deaths and over 61,000 infections in a day, bringing the total cases to 3.1 million. Globally, the pandemic has infected over 23.3 million people and claimed more than 807,000 lives. More about coronavirus in this report.
COVID-19 is ripping through India, killing nearly 1,000 people every day as the world desperately awaits a working vaccine. The disease appears to be somewhat slowing down in Latin America, with daily deaths declining in Brazil and Mexico. As the pandemic continues to ravage the US, the state of Iowa has reported its first child death due to the complications from coronavirus. President Donald Trump says FDA's approval for the convalescent plasma treatment will help slow down the death rate.
And it has proven to reduce mortality by 35%. It's a tremendous number. The FDA, MIT, Harvard, and Mount Sinai Hospital have also found convalescent plasma to be a very effective method of fighting this horrible disease. Based on the science and the data, the FDA has made the independent determination that the treatment is safe and very effective.
In Europe, the UK Health Minister called for children to return to schools, saying missing school pose a greater risk to children than COVID-19. Meanwhile, Germany has further tightened travel and border restrictions after witnessing a 4-month high infection rate. But the outbreak is finally on the decline in Australia's COVID-hit state of Victoria, as it reported its lowest daily infections in 7 weeks.
So many people are following those rules, and I'm grateful to each of them, to each of you, and I'm proud of each of you, because that's what's driving these numbers down. That's why we've got a 1 in front of these numbers, and we're on the verge of getting into double digits. It wasn't that long ago that we had more than 700 cases on a given day.
China has reported 0 domestically transmitted cases in the past 24 hours, while the recent surge in South Korea too has somewhat decreased, with the daily cases falling down to 266.
Meanwhile, 9 patients of COVID-19 have succumbed to the infection in Pakistan, taking the death toll in the country to 6,244. This comes as the recovery rate in the country remains promising at 93%. Data by the Health Ministry shows a decline in the infection rate, with a little over 10,000 active cases remaining in the country. The ministry said nearly 496 people tested positive in the past 24 hours, taking the tally to over 293,000. Sindh remains the worst-hit province, witnessing nearly 128,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 96,000 cases. The Health Ministry also said India's opposition leader Sonia Gandhi has decided to stand down as Congress party chief. The party's statement said that the ailing leader took the decision after several leaders asked her for an overhaul of the leadership. Gandhi says her tenure as the interim president, lasting for 1 year, is over and the party should choose a new chief. The developments bring out conflicts within the party, which lost power in 2014 and has remained in the wilderness ever since. While a faction of Congress leaders support Rahul Gandhi's return as chief, another section seeks a new president from outside the Gandhi's family. Moving on, Nepal has denied the Indian media's claim that China is occupying Nepalese land. Nepal's foreign ministry slammed flagrant reports about its territory, which was violated by the support of Prime Minister Khadga Prasad Sharma. The government also refuted the claims first made by Nepalese media, which later apologized for publishing the report. An Indian news agency alleged China has occupied Nepal's land, spreading over 7 bordering districts. The foreign ministry said Kathmandu and Beijing will solve any issue through consultation. The boundary between Nepal and China is demarcated on the basis of the Boundary Treaty of 1961. Over to Belarus, where 2 senior opposition politicians have been arrested amid ongoing protests against the president, Alexander Lukashenko. The government has given no reason for the detention of the Opposition Coordination Council members, Olga Kovalkova and Sergei Delvesky. Opponents of Lukashenko established the Coordination Council with the aim of negotiating a transfer of power. Earlier opposition candidate Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya said she hopes dialogue with the authorities will start soon. For the 15th consecutive day, tens of thousands of people rallied outside Presidential Palace demanding Lukashenko's resignation over alleged rigging in the election.
Our resistance is a marathon. The regime cannot deal with this marathon, but we can. We have the will, strength and support of each other. We shall all right. Go out, speak out, stand up, complain, be uncooperative, boycott, not agree and keep it up.
Earlier, the Defense Ministry issued a direct warning to the protesters, saying the army would deal with the security around National World War II memorials. Now moving on, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Stephen Biegun is set to travel today to Lithuania, Russia and Ukraine on a 3-day visit. In a statement, the State Department said Biegun will meet senior government leaders to discuss regional issues. The visit comes as Washington seeks a peaceful resolution to Belarus's election crisis. Washington and the European Union have condemned the election as marred by irregularities. On Thursday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo urged Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko to accept international help in opening talks with the opposition. Pompeo has also warned Russia not to intervene. Now, the UN Migrant Agency says the Libyan Red Crescent has retrieved the bodies of 22 migrants off the coastal town of Svaram. IOM's Libya mission chief Federico Soda said the deaths are the result of the hardening policy towards people fleeing conflict and extreme poverty. Officials say the retrieved bodies were all African males, but they said the nationalities of the victims were unknown. Earlier on Wednesday, the UN aid agency said dozens of migrants and refugees had perished off Libya in the deadliest shipwreck so far this year. The latest tragedy brings the death toll to 302 migrants and refugees known to have perished on the route this year. Torrential rain triggered flash flooding in Turkey's northern Black Sea region has killed 6 people, while 10 others are missing. In a statement, Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu said search and rescue operations are underway to find those missing. Soylu said power has been restored to some areas, but the damage to infrastructure is extensive. Turkey's Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency said 157 people have so far been rescued from the flood-stricken areas. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan offered condolences to families of the victims. Pakistan Embassy in Ankara has also offered condolences to the Turkish government over the loss of lives. Meanwhile, in the US, wildfires in California continue to rage on after killing 6 people and displacing over 175,000. The worst wildfires in the state's history has been fueled by high temperatures and lightning strikes. California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection said over 1 million acres of land and 700 buildings have been destroyed so far. It said more than fires are feared to ignite as more lightning storms are expected this week. President Donald Trump offered condolences to the victims and approved a disaster declaration as the state battles 24 major wildfires.
Yesterday, I approved a major disaster declaration for California. Spoke to Governor Newsom as they battle 2 of the worst wildfires in the history of their state. That continues. The federal government has already deployed over 26,000 first responders and personnel to battle the wildfires. We're working very closely with the governor.
Well, California has warned the blaze also threatens the capital, Sacramento and San Francisco Bay Area. Now, another tropical storm is heading towards the U.S. after killing 10 people in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Marco, a storm traveling over the Gulf of Mexico, has become a hurricane, while another tropical storm, Laura, is on course to cross over the same route. The storms have forced thousands of coastal residents in the U.S., Louisiana State and Cuba to flee, while flooding rose in Haiti. The U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a disaster declaration for Louisiana as it braces for Hurricane Marco. He said both the scope and pace of the hurricane is unprecedented and can bring significant damage across the Gulf Coast. Business news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. European markets have started the week on a positive note, brushing the worries over the pandemic aside momentarily. Frankfurt's DAX is leading the gains with almost 2.5%. London's FTSE has gained almost 2%, while Paris's CAC 40 has jumped over 2%. Italy's FTSE MIB 2 has climbed almost 2%. Earlier, all Asian stocks traded in positive territory as well. Now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.